Have you ever felt completely alone, even in a room full of people? Maybe you've scrolled through social media, seeing everyone else surrounded by friends, laughing at parties, posting group photos, while you sit there wondering what's wrong with you. Society tells us that if we don't have a large circle of friends, we're somehow broken, inadequate, missing out on life. But what if I told you that having no friends or very few friends might actually reveal something profound about who you are? Something that most people will never understand in their lifetime? Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychological minds in history, discovered a truth about solitude that completely contradicts everything modern society teaches us. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why being alone might not be your weakness. It might be your greatest strength. This is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about friendship, loneliness, and what it truly means to be human. Stay with me. Part 1. The Loneliness Epidemic. Before we dive into Jung's revolutionary insights, we need to understand the world we're living in. We're in the middle of what experts are calling a loneliness epidemic. Despite being more connected than ever through technology, people report feeling more isolated than at any point in recorded history. Think about that for a moment. We have thousands of followers online. We can video chat with someone on the other side of the planet. We're bombarded with social invitations, networking events, group chats, and yet genuine connection feels impossible. Here's what most self-help gurus won't tell you. The problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough to make friends. The problem is that you're living in a world that has completely forgotten what real friendship actually means. Let me share something with you. There was a period in my life where I had dozens of friends. My calendar was packed. Every weekend was full of plans. On paper, I was living the social dream, but I was completely empty inside. I realized something disturbing. I didn't actually know any of these people. And worse, they didn't know me. We were all performing, wearing masks, playing roles that society expected us to play. The moment I stopped pretending, most of those friendships evaporated like morning mist. And you know what? That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to confront a question that Carl Jung spent his entire life exploring. Who am I when no one else is watching? Part 2. Jung's revolutionary insight. Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist who fundamentally changed how we understand the human psyche. While his contemporary Sigmund Freud focused on our base desires and childhood traumas, Jung went deeper. He explored the spiritual, the archetypal, the transcendent aspects of human consciousness. And one of his most controversial, yet profound discoveries was this. Most people are terrified of being alone because they're terrified of meeting themselves. Let that sink in. Jung called this the encounter with the self, capital S. Not the small ego self that you present to the world, but the deeper, truer self that exists beneath all the masks and personas. Here's what Jung observed. Human beings create elaborate social structures not primarily for survival or companionship, but as a defense mechanism against self-awareness. In his own words, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. But there's a deeper layer here that most people miss. Jung believed that some individuals are called to a different path. He called them the individuated ones, people who undergo the psychological and spiritual process of individuation, where you separate your true identity from the collective expectations of society. These people often experience a profound loneliness, not because they're socially deficient, but because they're operating on a completely different frequency than most of society. Think about the great artists, philosophers, mystics, and visionaries throughout history. Van Gogh, Nietzsche, Emily Dickinson, Tesla. Most of them spent significant periods of their lives in isolation, not because they couldn't make friends, but because friendship, as society defines it, felt hollow compared to the depth of their inner world. Jung himself wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But here's the cost that no one talks about. Becoming who you truly are often means standing alone. Part 3. The shadow side of friendship. Now, before you think I'm saying all friendship is bad, I'm not. Jung wasn't antisocial. He had close relationships throughout his life. But he recognized something that modern culture desperately needs to understand. Most of what we call friendship is actually a collective delusion. Jung introduced the concept of the persona, the mask we wear in social situations. It comes from the Latin word for the masks that actors wore in ancient theater. Every day, you put on a persona. You have your work persona, your family persona, your social persona. These masks help you navigate different social situations. But here's the dangerous part. Most people never take the mask off. They wear it so long that they forget it's a mask. They become the role they're playing, and then they seek out friends who will validate and reinforce that mask. Think about your own social circles. Be honest with yourself. How many of your friendships are based on genuine understanding, and how many are based on mutual ego reinforcement? How many of your friends would still be there if you completely changed? If you pursued a radically different path? If you challenged their worldview? Jung called this collective unconsciousness. When groups of people unconsciously agree to maintain certain illusions to avoid the discomfort of self-examination. I remember a conversation that changed my perspective forever. A friend, someone I'd known for years, said something that struck me. I'm afraid that if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. I realized in that moment that most of our friendship had been two actors performing for each other. We weren't actually friends. We were two personas validating each other's performance. Real friendship, according to Jung, requires something much more rare and difficult. The courage to be authentic, even when authenticity is uncomfortable. And here's the painful truth. Most people aren't ready for that level of authenticity. They're too invested in their own masks to tolerate someone who's removed theirs. This is why individuated people often find themselves alone, not because they're antisocial, but because they refuse to play the game anymore. Part 4, the call to individuation. So what is this individuation that Jung talked about? And why does it lead to solitude? Individuation is the psychological process of becoming a complete, integrated human being. It's the journey from unconscious living to conscious being. Jung described it as a kind of spiritual alchemy, transforming the base metal of your conditioned self into the gold of your authentic self. But this process requires something that terrifies most people. Descending into your own darkness. Jung called it confronting the shadow. All the parts of yourself that you've repressed, denied, or hidden away because they don't fit your self-image or society's expectations. Your anger, your desires, your fears, your unconventional thoughts, the parts of you that society told you were unacceptable. Most people avoid this confrontation their entire lives. They stay busy. They surround themselves with distractions and people. They keep the TV on, the music playing, the social calendar full. Why? Because silence is terrifying when you've never met yourself. But for those who are called to individuation, there comes a moment, often a crisis, where avoidance is no longer possible. Maybe it's a depression that won't lift, a relationship that shatters, a success that feels hollow, a persistent voice inside saying, there has to be more than this. Jung called this the call to adventure in the hero's journey. And every hero's journey begins with a departure, a leaving behind of the known world. For many people, this literally means a period of social isolation, not because you're running away from people, but because you need space to hear your own voice. You need silence to meet yourself. You need solitude to separate your authentic desires from the desires that were programmed into you. This is where the loneliness becomes sacred. Jung wrote, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. The person who has no friends might not be socially deficient. They might be awake in a world of dreamers. Part 5. The difference between loneliness and solitude. Now here's a crucial distinction that Jung made, one that changes everything. There's a profound difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a wound, a painful disconnection from yourself and others. It's the feeling that something is missing, that you're incomplete without external validation. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice a powerful space where you reconnect with your deepest self. It's not about lacking connection. It's about choosing the most important connection first, the one with yourself. Many people who think they're lonely are actually experiencing the growing pains of transformation. They're not lonely, they're shedding an old skin. Jung observed that this confusion causes immense suffering. People try to solve their loneliness by forcing social connections, when what they actually need is intentional solitude. It's like being thirsty and drinking salt water. The activity looks right, but it makes the problem worse. When I finally embraced solitude, truly embraced it, something extraordinary happened. I stopped feeling lonely. Not because I found friends, but because I found myself. And once you've met yourself, genuinely met yourself, you're never truly alone again. This is what Jung meant when he said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. When you're comfortable with your own company, you become comfortable with genuine connection. You stop needing people to complete you, and you start attracting people who resonate with who you actually are. But, and this is important, those people are rare. The individuated person naturally has fewer friends, but the friendships they do have are infinitely deeper. Quality over quantity isn't just a preference. It's an inevitable result of authenticity. You can't have deep connections with everyone because most people are still wearing masks, and a mask can't connect with a genuine face. Part 6, the gift of being alone. So if you're someone who has few or no friends right now, I want to offer you a radically different perspective. What if your aloneness is preparing you for something? Jung believed that periods of isolation serve a purpose in the individuation process. They're not punishments or failures, they're incubation periods. Think about the caterpillar in the cocoon. From the outside, it looks like death, isolation, stagnation. But inside, the most extraordinary transformation is occurring. Your period of aloneness might be a time of creative development. Many of the world's greatest works of art, literature, science, and philosophy were created by individuals in periods of solitude. The depth of inner life becomes the wellspring of external contribution, a time of psychological integration. You're doing the difficult work of becoming whole. You're collecting the scattered pieces of yourself and assembling them into something coherent and authentic, a time of spiritual awakening. Nearly every mystical tradition recognizes the necessity of solitude for spiritual growth. The Desert Fathers, the Buddhist monks, the vision quests of indigenous traditions. Transformation requires retreat, a time of preparation. You're building the psychological and spiritual foundation for the life you're meant to live. This can't be rushed, and it can't be done in a crowd. Jung himself went through what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense isolation and psychological crisis that lasted several years. During this time, he had very few social connections. But it was precisely this period that produced his most important insights and laid the foundation for his life's work. I'm not saying isolation is always positive or that all loneliness is productive. Clinical isolation and depression require support and often professional help. But I am saying this. If you're going through a period where you have few or no friends, and it's not because of social anxiety or depression, but because you simply don't resonate with superficial connection, you might not be broken. You might be becoming. Part 7, Practical Wisdom for the Journey. So how do you navigate this? How do you embrace solitude without falling into destructive isolation? Jung offers us several guideposts. First, develop a relationship with your inner world. This means active imagination, journaling, dream analysis, creative expression. You must learn to dialogue with yourself, not in the way of obsessive rumination, but in genuine exploration. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That meeting can happen within yourself, between your conscious ego and your unconscious depths. Second, accept that you're on a different path. Stop comparing your social life to others. Stop judging yourself by society's metrics of success. Your journey is archetypal. It follows patterns as old as humanity itself. You're not the first to walk this path, and you won't be the last. Third, learn to distinguish between healthy solitude and depressive isolation. Healthy solitude energizes you, even if it's emotionally intense. It feels like going home. Depressive isolation drains you and disconnects you from life itself. If you're experiencing the latter, please seek support. There's no weakness in getting help. Even Jung had mentors and underwent analysis himself. Fourth, trust the process. Individuation doesn't have a timeline. Some people complete significant aspects of it in a few years. For others, it's the work of a lifetime. Don't rush it. Don't force it. As Jung said, the pendulum of the mind alternates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. There will be confusion. There will be doubt. That's part of the journey. Fifth, when you do connect with others, do so authentically. One genuine conversation is worth 1,000 superficial interactions. Quality over quantity isn't just a principle. It's the natural result of living authentically. You'll find that as you become more yourself, you'll naturally attract the few people who resonate with your frequency. And those connections, though rare, will sustain you in ways that 100 superficial friendships never could. So let's come back to where we started. Having no friends, or very few, friends reveals something that almost no one understands. You might be in the process of becoming who you truly are. In a world where most people are sleepwalking through life, wearing masks, performing roles, and avoiding the depths of their own being, your loneliness might be a sign that you're waking up. Carl Jung spent his life exploring the deepest questions of human existence. And one of his most powerful insights was this: the journey to wholeness often requires walking alone. Not because you're antisocial, not because you're broken, not because something is wrong with you, but because transformation requires space. Growth requires solitude. Authenticity requires the courage to stand apart from the crowd. If you're watching this video and you've felt seen, understood, validated in some way, know that you're not alone in your aloneness. There's an entire lineage of individuals throughout history who have walked this path. Jung called them the individuated ones. Others have called them seekers, mystics, artists, philosophers, the awakened. You're part of this lineage, and your period of solitude isn't a detour from your life. It is your life. It's the most important work you'll ever do.